Before the 1990s, when somebody died violently in a home, the cleanup fell to the family. They came home to the worst day of their life, and then they had to clean it up themselves. Then, a man watched a movie. In 1996, a 28-year-old saw the scene in a film where a fixer calmly cleans up after a killing, and thought, somebody should do that for real. He started one of the first companies in the country. At the time, only a handful existed nationwide. Within a couple of decades, it had grown into a $350 million industry with more than 500 companies. So you want to own a crime scene cleanup company. It is one of the most misunderstood businesses in the country. People assume the police handle this. They do not. So let us open the whole ledger. Why the person paying is almost never who you would expect. Why a single job can bill more than a used car. What you actually inherit when you take this work on, and it is not only biological. And why the hardest cost in this entire business does not show up on any invoice. Start with the single fact that defines this entire business, because almost everybody gets it wrong. When the police finish at a scene, their job is the investigation. Once they release it, they leave. The tape comes down, the officers drive away, and the mess stays exactly where it is. And here is the part that shocks people. Law enforcement is not responsible for cleaning it up. That responsibility falls on whoever owns the property, or the family of the person who died. Think about how brutal that is. A family has just lost someone, and now, on top of the grief, they are handed the practical nightmare of restoring the room where it happened. Almost nobody can face doing that themselves. That is the business. You are the person who answers that call. You arrive quietly. You restore the property completely, and you let a devastated family avoid the one task they could never do. It is grim, and it is also a real mercy. And because the client is in crisis, and the work is something almost no one else will touch, a single job commonly bills anywhere from $1,000 to $25,000. Now, what does it actually take to do this work, and what comes with it? First, the gear. Because this is not mopping. It is regulated biohazard remediation. Your technicians wear full body suits and full face respirators because they are handling human blood and tissue, which can carry disease. Standard bleach does not do this job. Operators use specialized hospital-grade disinfectants and enzyme cleaners that break biological material down at the molecular level, plus air scrubbers and ozone machines to remove contamination and odor from the air itself. All of that costs money before you take a single call. Startup for a compliant operation runs somewhere between $50,000 and $150,000. Second, the paperwork. Because this is a heavily regulated field, you follow federal workplace safety rules for handling blood-borne pathogens. The contaminated material you remove is legally medical waste, and it has to be transported and destroyed through licensed medical waste channels. Get any of that wrong, mishandle the waste, skip the training, cut a corner on disposal, and you are not just unsafe. You are exposed to serious legal liability. The rules are the barrier, and the rules are also what keep amateurs out. But the heaviest thing you inherit is not the equipment or the paperwork. It is what the work does to the people who do it. So where does the money actually come from? It is not just violent crime scenes. Layer 1 is trauma and crime scenes, homicides, suicides, serious accidents. These are the highest intensity jobs, and they pay accordingly, but they are not the bulk of the volume. Layer 2 is the quiet giant of this industry. Unattended deaths. Someone passes away alone at home and is not found for days or weeks. Decomposition is one of the most common calls these companies receive, and one of the most difficult to clean. Layer 3 is hoarding cleanups. Homes packed floor to ceiling over years, often with serious biohazards hidden underneath. These jobs are enormous. They take days, and they command very high fees. Layer 4 is contamination and specialty work. Drug lab decontamination, tear gas cleanup, infectious disease outbreaks, industrial accidents. Each needs specialized protocols, and each carries a premium. Added up, and a working operation, with the right contracts, brings in roughly $75,000 to over $300,000 a year, and the strongest firms clear far more. Here is the number that reframes this entire business. You would think the value comes from the cleaning. It does not. Anybody can be taught to scrub. The value comes from two things almost nobody can offer at the same time: the willingness to walk into the worst moment of a stranger's life, and the discretion and compassion to do it without making that moment worse. Listen to that again. The technical part, the disinfectant, the equipment, is the easy part. The rare part, the piece clients are really paying for, is a person who can be trusted inside the room on the worst day anyone can picture, and who will handle it with care. That is why this is not really a cleaning business. It is a trust business that happens to involve cleaning. So let us run the real books, because the costs here are unusual. On the cost side, first, the consumables. Every job burns through suits, gloves, respirator filters, and specialized chemicals, and much of it is single-use and thrown away as biohazard waste. Your supply costs are real on every single call. Second, disposal. That medical waste cannot go in a dumpster. It must be hauled and destroyed through licensed facilities, and you pay for every pound of it, every time. Third, the vehicle and readiness. These calls come at any hour, so you keep a stocked response vehicle and people on call around the clock. You are paying to be ready for work that arrives without warning. Fourth, insurance and certification. Specialized liability coverage, ongoing training, and certifications that have to be maintained. This is not a cost you pay once. It runs continuously, whether the phone rings or not. But the largest hidden cost on this ledger never appears as a line item. It is turnover. The work is so psychologically hard that people burn out and leave, and constantly hiring and training replacements is one of the biggest drains in the entire business. And that leads straight to the trap that quietly breaks people in this business. The trap is not financial, it is human. The owner who succeeds at first is often the one willing to do the hardest jobs personally. But the very thing that makes them good at it, the ability to walk into anything, is the thing that wears them down. Every scene stays with you a little. The unattended deaths, the young lives lost, the grieving families at the door. It accumulates, quietly, and no amount of protective equipment shields you from that part. So the owner who built the business on their own stomach for the work eventually hits a wall. They cannot personally take every call forever, and they cannot easily find others who can. The business is capped not by demand, which is endless, but by how many people can psychologically survive the work. That is why some operators in this field burn bright and then vanish. The money was there, the demand was there. What ran out was the human capacity to keep walking into the worst day of other people's lives. It is worth remembering how new all of this actually is. For almost all of history, there was no such thing as a crime scene cleanup company. When someone died at home, the family cleaned it, or a kind neighbor helped, and everyone just carried that on top of their grief. The whole industry is only a few decades old. It grew for a mix of reasons. Rising awareness of blood-borne diseases made amateur cleanup a genuine hazard. Regulations tightened, and a few early entrepreneurs realized that families would gladly pay to never have to face that task. One of those early founders got the idea, famously, from a single scene in a popular movie about a professional who calmly cleans up after violence. Within a year of him starting, his state moved to regulate the whole field. The business and its rules grew up together, almost overnight. So how does a crime scene cleanup company actually fail? Rarely from lack of work. Picture the common failure. An owner starts strong, takes every hard job personally, and builds a real reputation. The calls keep coming. Revenue is healthy. On paper, it is working. But underneath, two cracks are spreading. The owner is quietly exhausted by the scenes they cannot stop seeing, and their few trained technicians keep burning out and quitting. So the owner keeps absorbing more of the load personally to fill the gap. Then one bad stretch tips it over. A cluster of especially harrowing jobs, a key employee leaving, the owner finally hitting their own limit. Suddenly there is nobody left who can, or will, walk through the door. The calls still come, there is just no one to answer them. The company does not die because the market dried up. It dies because the one rare resource, people who can endure the work, ran out. That is the death spiral unique to this business. So who actually builds something lasting here? The survivors understand from day one that this is a people business first, and a cleaning business second. So they build the company around protecting the humans who do the work, not just around winning jobs. First, they never rely on a single hero. They hire and train a real team. They rotate the hardest jobs so no one person absorbs all of it, and they treat burnout as a business risk to be managed, not a weakness to ignore. Second, they build referral relationships, the quiet engine of this whole field. Steady work comes from funeral homes, property managers, insurance companies, and first responders who call the same trusted company again and again. Those relationships, not advertising, are what hold the company up. Third, they price for the reality of the work. They do not compete to be the cheapest. They charge properly for the skill, the risk, the discretion, and the round-the-clock readiness. Because a company that underprices this work cannot afford to protect its own people, and then it collapses. Fourth, and above all, they treat the families and the deceased with deep respect. In this business, dignity is not just decency, it is the entire product, and it is exactly what earns the referrals that keep the company alive. So does owning a crime scene cleanup company actually work. Run both sides. The good version. You built a real team, protected them, priced the work honestly, and earned a web of referrals. Demand in this field never stops. It is deeply recession-resistant, and you run a stable, profitable business that also does something that has to be done, with dignity. The bad version. You built it on your own stomach alone. You underpriced to win jobs, you could not keep staff, and every scene added to a weight you never dealt with. The money was there, but the human cost quietly bankrupted you, long before the business did. So the honest verdict. A crime scene cleanup company is a real, durable, recession-proof business, with strong margins and endless demand. But it is not a cleaning business, and treating it like one is how people break. It is a trust and endurance business, and the only ones who last are those who protect their people as carefully as they restore a room. Here is the thing to remember. The next time you drive past an ordinary-looking van with a quiet company name and no explanation, inside that van is equipment almost no one else knows how to use, going to a place almost no one else is willing to enter, to do a task a grieving family could never do alone. You are not really selling cleaning. You are selling the willingness to stand in the room everyone else runs from, and the grace to do it well. That is the rarest thing this business has, and it is the only thing that was ever really for sale. The mess was never the hard part. Being the person who can walk in and face it, with steadiness and respect, always was.